Hey, Don Williams here with today's episode of the Proven Entrepreneur Show. I got a real treat for you today. I got a sales guru, and I don't throw that word around lightly. So, Doug C. Brown, welcome to the Proven Entrepreneur.
Hey, Don. Thanks for having me here. I'm so grateful to be here.
And it's my pleasure. So, Doug, tell us, name of your company, what you do, who you do it with or for, and why do you do it?
Sure. The company's called CEO Sales Strategies. And I advise companies for the most part, advise entrepreneurs, solo entrepreneurs, as well as major corporations. Been doing it now for 30 plus years. And I help them with predictable revenue and growing their revenues in a math-based, metrics-based formula. So why do I do it? Well, in my youth, I was always coaching companies and doing these type of things, always in entrepreneurial ventures. I think we're on our 37th company, if I remember correctly now. And, the reason I do it is because I wish I had somebody like, and this is going to sound arrogant, but I wish I had somebody like me tell me what I know now when I was involved in that process, because I made, the mistakes that a lot of entrepreneurs make. And, sometimes they were happy mistakes and sometimes they were very unhappy mistakes. But, I've won more than I've lost, so to speak. So that's the good thing. So that's why I do it. And especially now I'm at a point in my life where, money's not really the issue. So, as it was in my, say, 30s, now it's more of I can just make people's lives easier, really, when it comes down to it, because it's very predictable what we do. And it's really in the math.
Yeah, I love that. And, I live in kind of the same neighborhood. I'm in kind of the same space. And I always think that, a coach or consultant who can not only help you go from A to B, okay, who's number one, they've already taken that trip. And so
Right.
they know how to help you do it. But also if they can push them a little closer together, that just accelerates everything. And
Yeah.
so love that. Now, you've built and trained some of the best sales teams in the entire world. What's a really common mistake even really smart entrepreneurs make when they try to scale sales?
Ooh, that's a big question.
Hmm.
There's a lot of 'em. I'll tell you the first couple that I definitely know. When they're trying to scale, they don't really have an ideal true goal. They have a kind of a goal they throw out there, but it's not really backed with any solid, like what you asked me. Why are we doing this and what's the purpose of this? It's like, I'm doing whatever, pick a number, I'm doing 15 million today. I want to get to 40 million. It's like, what time frame? I'll use a real, one of my clients, who I coach, I do a lot of work now with consultants and things like that. His client wanted to go from 400,000 a month to 2.5 million a month in 4.5 months. And I'm like,
That's big.
why don't you play the lottery? Like, it's like, it's a huge amount of growth. So I said, what kind of marketing budget do they have? And they go, well, they just hired a CMO and not really a heavy marketing budget. I'm like, so tell me how this is going to work. Like, let's run the numbers. And I'm like, let me guess, they've never have grown a $30 million company before, right? Because that's what they're trying to do. They try to go from 5 million to 30 million in, like 4.5 months. So, do you have a $5 million marketing budget? Do you have a sales team that can handle this? Do you, all this stuff that's going to come along that already, Don, is not going to happen that fast. So I educated my client to educate their client, and let's take a first step and figure out what is the real goal. And the real goal was to get from 400,000 to 600,000, which I said was still pushing it, but it's a much more tangible goal than to try to go to 2.5 million. So that's one of the biggest mistakes I see people make. And then the second big mistake I see them make right after that is, they don't know who their ideal right fit buyer is.
Yeah.
So what they end up doing is coming out, throwing a ton of money at this whole process. And then it's like, well, that didn't work. That didn't work. That didn't work. Our messaging's off. This is off. That's off. Man, well, that worked, but we're not getting where we want to go. And so, and of course, if we're trying to, I don't know, pick any analogy you want, hit a target of whatever. We want to go to the mountains. but we drive toward the ocean that has no mountains near it, we'll see the mountains if we keep taking a boat and keep taking a land vehicle and we drive, go there. Eventually we'll hit a mountain, but it's a long path. When we know what the ideal right fit buyer wants, we know how to message them. We know how to find them. We know what they want, they fear, their needs, how to have a conversation with them, and things just go a heck of a lot faster, compressing that time to contact to close. And I think that's probably the second biggest mistake. They make others, but those are two biggies.
Yeah, I love that. And so one of my first businesses, I was in the call center business. And, when you do outbound, no matter how much skill you have, no matter how much technology you have, if you're calling the wrong people, it won't work. You got to be calling the right people, and you got to know who that ideal client is and put all your effort onto them. What do you think is there a common first domino, a common first thing you change that helps a client begin to grow?
Yeah, usually it's within, right? So a
Mm,
lot of companies are sitting on a lot of things that, or some things that, like most of them have, and by the way, this is something somebody can easily implement. Most of them have neglected their client base, right? Their dormant client base. And so the first thing I'll look at is, you look at direct mail rules of recency, frequency, and purchase, right? That's how they used to determine who got your mailer or not, right? So we go after the dormant clients because there's already a relationship there, and we just re-engage with them, and they all of a sudden they're picking up sales. And you mentioned the word guru and beginning. I appreciate the compliment, but they think I'm like some guy who descended down from the heavens, and they're picking up all these sales that are just sitting there. Re-engagement of follow-up in component, like they're not doing follow-up. Follow-up's an easy way to get a 5% minimum bump up to maybe 15 or 20%, depending on how, lacking it is in the company. So we start to re-engage on things that get them very quick wins. And there's a reason for that. Number one, they like it. Number two,
sure.
they think I'm good and they keep me there in the company, right? So there's some strategy that's, self-serving, but that's what we look at first. We teach something that all the time that's like short, 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 medium, long. And it's like, let's work on short strategies, stuff that will bring in cash within the first 30 days in the beginning, no more than 60 days, i.e. referrals, things like that. Like it's all the stuff that they should be doing that they're not doing until I show up and I actually force the accountability and the measurements of these processes.
Yeah, I love that. I'm always amazed with clients when I'm like, what we're going to do is we're going to teach you how to convert one more prospect to a sale out of every 10. And they're like, well, that doesn't sound like very much. You're like, well, on a good day, you're converting 2 out of 10. So when you convert just one more
Right.
out of 10, it's a 50% lift.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so, you do got to look at the math. And then, I wrote a book about 7 or 8 years ago titled Romancing Your Customer, which is all about treating your customer with kid gloves and the way you'd want to be treated if you had a really high bar. So, so many companies, even kind of sizable companies, they don't really put much money or effort into retention or win back. And you're like, now look, if you were AT&T, about 85% of your marketing budget would be going to acquisition,
Yeah.
and then about 10% to retention. And that includes new sales from those customers. And then 5% to people that have left, where you just call and say, you left. I'm sorry you left. I'm sure I did something wrong. I'd like to fix it. Would you please come back? And you'd be amazed at how many people come back just because, you owned up to maybe you did something wrong, maybe you didn't.
Yeah,
So
a lot of people think just like you're talking about, like, I need new clients, new clients, new clients, new clients. We already have new clients. You just aren't working them to get new regenerated sales out of there. Increase the buying frequency, increase the transactional value, increase new clients through your clients. Your marketing cost drops down, right? So absolutely on target what you said.
So you're kind of my brother from another mother. I've heard you say this, and And I've been saying this, and for all I know, there's 10 other people that say this. One of the things I've always said is, hey, quit selling, start helping. Stop
Yeah.
selling, start helping. And you often say selling is really about helping. When did
Well,
you personally learn that truth?
honestly, I think probably somewhere around when I was 5 years old. So I started working for my dad's business at age 3, sweeping floors. And I was always hanging around with the adults because I'm 3, 4 years old, right? I mean, what are they going to do with me? They're not going to put me in a closet. So my father used to take me to all of these. He owned an industrial machinery repair and sales company. So we'd go into like these big factories and things like that. I loved it. It was awesome. And we'd sit in the owner's office or the CEO's office, and my father and he would be talking. And my dad was always willing to walk away.
Mm,
If it wasn't the right fit for him or wasn't the right fit for the company, he was willing to walk away. So he was in there actually helping, and he built a reputation amongst. My dad was very smart. I mean, he could fix anything electronic, electrical. I don't know how he did it. I didn't have that bug, but he was very smart. And what would happen is people were seeking him out because when you play what I call win win win, right? And you're going to be helping people, their defenses start to come down when they realize you're willing to not stay there when you're helping them because they're so used to being sold to. And my dad didn't do it. And it kind of clicked when I was sitting in, I think, an office and the guy was pushing back, saying, I don't know if we want to do this or whatever. And my father's like, that's okay. Listen, I'm here to help. If you don't think the help's going to help you, then I don't want to help you because if I help you, then you're not winning. And I'm just going to get another client. It doesn't make sense. And come on, Doug, let's go. And the guy's like, whoa, 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 wait a minute. I didn't say that, right? So I've always come, for the most part, I've come at it from that perspective. I think people don't play that way, Don, because they don't have enough leads. They don't have enough
mm,
people to talk to. So they kind of get into that scarcity mode. And then it's like, oh, I got to sell every single thing. And the reality is we're not supposed to.
yeah, we're
No one
not.
no one has 100% close rate consistently over a period of time, and if they do, I would make a very logical and strong argument they're not talking to enough people.
Yeah. I totally buy that. Using the romancing your customer metaphor, I'm like, if you're not selling enough, you have one of two, maybe you have both problems, but most either you don't have a consistent stream of qualified leads.
Mhm.
Okay. So the reason you're not married is you're only going on a date in January and June. That's not
Right.
enough opportunities to meet your soulmate, or you're not converting a high enough percentage of your consistent stream of qualified leads. And so in the romancing your customer jargon, that's the person who has 5 first dates a week, but never a second date. It's like, we got to teach you to be a little better dater. A long time ago, I did a stint where I worked with Judge Ziegler, who was Zig's brother, and
Brother, yeah.
Judge held the world record in pot and pan sales, not Zig. And he used to have a line, and he was a great guy. I loved him. He had a line where he would tell salespeople, I know exactly how many appointments you need to hit your goal. And they'd be like, how could you know? And he's like, because it's the same number for all of you. You need too many appointments. That's the correct number. And so I certainly hold that to be true.
I think there'd be far less divorces if people followed your reasoning because, a lot of people, they don't have enough. Well, they don't even have enough leads. Let's never mind qualified
Mhm.
leads, right? So
Yeah.
they go on a few dates. They find, well, this person's kind of nice and they keep gravitating to that, but they're never looking for the real signs of maybe this isn't right long term there. And so they go in and they enter in the process and two people are saying the same thing on each side and they haven't really experienced enough. And then they get into it and, it's like, wow, I didn't realize you brush your teeth with gasoline, that type of thing. And so, the master prospector will always outsell the master closer.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so if people embrace that and they realize now the master prospector knows how to do exactly what you were talking about in the book, which is how do you get qualified leads, not just leads, right? And once you understand how to do that, you as the seller will calm down and not always having happy ears or whatever it might be, and just trying to closing say, no matter what the movie Glenn Ross, especially in today's selling environment, it's not going to work.
Yeah. You are my brother from another mother. And so I can remember when I first started out as a young salesperson, they were attempting to train us to close. And I was like, wouldn't it be better if I just did a sales presentation that was so strong that at the end they asked me to buy?
Yeah.
And they thought I was weird, but of course I was the number one guy in the country. I was like, it just makes so much more sense to be sure that it's going to really work for them and show them how it's in their best interest. And then they'll just give me their money. There's no arm wrestle. There's no try and make somebody do something. They just want to do it because it's in their best interest. I just get to kind of ride along.
Yeah. It's really a simple process, right? It's like they got a problem or an opportunity, they want to capitalize on a goal. If you can help them do that, and you demonstrate the proven value they're looking for, they're likely going to ask you, when can you start?
Absolutely. Yeah. You won't have to close. They'll just buy. So here's a tough one. Let's say it's all gone. You have to start today from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal, this is a big goal, but you're a big producer. The goal is to build a 7-figure business in 90 days using only your network and your phone. Give us one strategy you'd use.
Well, it's interesting you said that because that literally did happen to me. And, I went through a divorce. And in the divorce, it was not a happy one. It wasn't amicable, right? And so when we went through the divorce, the assets got depleted down so much that I was like, I'm running 2 companies at this point, and we had less than 100,000 US dollars in the bank. Now, for some people go, well, you had 100 grand. When you're running 2 companies with payroll, that's not a lot of money, right? And so we ended up once the divorce happened, within the first 6 weeks, we generated $860,000. So, and then we ended up on that company from pretty much having to let everybody go to rebuilding it. We ended up at 1.27 million that first year. Oh, it wasn't quite a full year. It was more like the divorce happened in March. So by December, in 9 months, we did over $1 million. So how did I do it? Well, when you're only got a phone and you've only got a network, you go to the network that actually has the resources that you're looking for. And if you already have a network that trust you, they're going to open up opportunities for you. And that's what we did. And we ended up selling. And by the way, it doesn't have to be like 45 people in your network. It could be 1 to 5, of the right people. And so one of the clients wanted us to do a campaign for them, and we did. And in 6 weeks, we generated $860,000 right then and there. And then and then a few other relationships. One, we got 180,000 that came in on top of that. So you can just start to see it wasn't like 50 relationships. Even though I had 50 in my bag of networking, if you will. But we focused in. That's the other thing too that I found is if you don't want to spread yourself too wide too quickly, once you understand that I can actually make money here, you want to kind of focus on that process. And that same company, we ended up doing the second year, we ended up doing almost 1.5 million just from that same networking list. So we were able to take that focus and then take the focus on the other company and work the other networking people that we had within that list on the other company. So, maybe, but I do want to say one thing on it, Don, is like we had momentum still going through relationships. Now, if I didn't have the relationships, different story, but those relationships are a gold. And that's another place that companies and people don't work enough. They don't work the relationships. Some people are just sitting around thinking, man, if I could just help somebody today, but they don't call upon them or they don't stay in touch with them and they don't, I mean, we're right now, we've got a SaaS company that we just got our MVP out on. And I'm going to be calling upon relationships to either look at funding to grow the company out, this new company, or relationships that can put me in front of buyers who will self-fund the rest of the process for some money for marketing and money for continued development and operational support. So I think it's just a lot of people don't go back to their relationships. And, I reached out to one of my relationships, for example, and I said, hey, I don't need a ton of money here. I'm not going to raise millions. I don't need it on this. We're talking high hundreds of thousands of dollars. And one guy's like, well, I probably could chip in 300 grand if you really want. And so it's like, wow, right? It's like, but that comes from building relationships over years of trust,
Absolutely. Yeah,
right?
years of trust. And let me tell you, if you're an entrepreneur today and you're like, well, how do I know if I have those relationships? This is your modern day Rolodex.
Yeah.
If they're in here, they're at least minimally qualified, and there's some of them in there that are expertly qualified to help you.
Yeah, and they may not directly be able to help you, but they know other people who might be able to help you. And for those of you who don't know what a Rolodex is, because I don't know how old the audience is, a Rolodex literally was a bunch of cards that had contact information on it that you would actually could, in most cases, you could turn a couple of knobs and the cards would rotate around, and it was called a Rolodex. It's haven't heard. We use names like that sometimes. And I know that, like, my children are in their 20s, and so some of their friends, they're like, what you had a cord on your phone, like what,
Yeah.
like it's like,
Yeah, I had a 20-foot cord
yeah,
on the
you love, I
phone.
mean, gosh, you love the
Yeah.
20-foot phone, you can
And
walk around the
everybody
room.
wanted to answer it. Everybody wanted to answer it when it rang. So thank you for sharing that. Last question. When people aren't selling as much as they want to, and they begin the journey to improving that can create a high pressure room internally,
Mm.
because it's like, we've not done this. Now we're going to bring in this expert, and they start feeling the heat. On mindset alone, give me a couple things that separates the champs from the chumps, the people who get it done from the people who don't.
So I just want to qualify the question so I answer it correctly. If somebody isn't selling what they want to, and now are we bringing somebody like yourself or me in to help them? And then what's the mindset or mind shift that has to happen around there? Is that the question, or was it different?
Yes. And that being either the CEO, the founder, or anybody in the sales channel, what mindset change are they going to have to make to get the job done?
If they're in this place right now where they're kind of caught up in the limbic system, the fight, flight, freeze or fawn type thing. If they're in the limbic system, the first thing that we've got to be able to do is be able to kind of break the pattern out of that limbic system.
Mm.
Because if we don't, me or you, Don, coming in there, we're going to be perceived, no matter what kind of information we bring in, is going to be perceived potentially as a threat. And once we're perceived as a threat, the reasoning part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, it's going to actually justify the limbic system's place.
Yeah.
Right. And so now it's kind of like locked in there. And it's like, if any of you have ever had a discussion with somebody and you're like, what? And it's logical on your side. And they're just like not coming off any point to see your point of view. They're locked up in their limbic system. In fact, when somebody is absolutely sure, this is right, this is right, this is right, even if you know it's not, in their head, they're locked up in their limbic system. They shut down the reasoning side of their brain, because it takes like 1/200th of a second for the limbic system and like 2 seconds for the prefrontal cortex to kick in.
Yeah.
So it's never going to win. The only way you can start, the mind is set at that point, right? So I look at it as mind flowing or mind shifting. That's the first thing. And the way to get them out of that, it's the same way to actually get objections resolved, is we've got to create some type of pattern interrupt in that process to get them to move from that to a perhaps this is possible, to, moving from perhaps it's possible to this looks possible. I think it could be possible. Now they're kind of in a neutral state. So that's the first thing we've got to get the shift to happen. Now, if they're not open to that possibility, then I wouldn't take the engagement personally, right? But let's say they are open to that possibility. We need to have that discussion up. And if they're open to that, the way to get the mind to start moving from now I'm in neutral to buying confidence on the idea, again, is to come in with very quick ideas that start giving that, it's like sugar. They take sugar and you're like, "Wee, I feel pretty good for the moment," right? You gotta kinda get those short-term gains in there. Then they're open to work on the things that are creating the limbic system lock.
Love
And that
that.
would be my advice for anybody, you've gotta prove your worth in there, but once you start to prove your worth in there, then, it reminds me of a couple ones that I just was engaged in recently. Like, I love working with, like I used to only work with major companies, major corporations, because you and I both know the money's there, right? And
They
that
write
type
big
of thing.
checks.
Right. I'm super gratified to help like solo entrepreneurs now, especially consultants and things like that, because I just had two of them recently and that we were working together. And for 7 years, one of them was only taking payments. And I said, "Well, why are you only doing that?" He goes, "Well, that's the only way it's done. Right?
Yeah.
That's the way companies will pay. They'll only pay." And so I said, "You open to the possibility," because he had already started going through this process with me. He goes, "Yeah, okay." And within 3 weeks, he closed his first full pay consulting deal in 7 years. And he's like, "It was so easy." Right? So all it was process that he had. Then I had another gentleman, he was doing 640,000 a year. So he was doing pretty good as a consultant, right? I mean,
Yep.
that's not bad. You get no employees, that's, or one personal assistant.
Yep.
And he went from 40,000 added $245,000 in 6 weeks to his numbers. And with him, it was about ideal right fit buyer, but it was the mind set around the ideal right fit buyer. And as soon as I was able to get him a very short win, like we got a very short win within the first week, it was like, oh my gosh, I got this big meeting with this big ideal right fit buyer. He closed 2 deals and added $250,000 to the bottom line within 6 weeks. Then he's like, "Oh my gosh, let's do more of this," right? So we've gotta get him a little bit of, because if we gotta build a little bit of confidence, that's all. And
Yeah.
so I hope I'm answering your question, like, at that point. And then they're far more open to going into more depth, because usually we're locked up in our limbic system due to the habitual training we've had all the way through our lives to keep ourselves safe. And then when we're kids, we're still acting out that same pattern when we're adults. And we're like, this doesn't work. And it's like, no, because you're not 11 anymore. It's here, but you're trying to serve a template of love. And that's what gets people locked up. So that's what I know anyways.
Yeah. I love that. And this, I think I know, many things for most of my life, I was sure I knew. And if you disagreed with me, it's like, I'm right and you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
and, but at this stage of my life, only kind of this, I think I know. And I think I know if you're going to make a change in your business, if you're going to make a change in your family, you're going to make a change in your life, you got to make a change in your mind first. And so you got to shift. I like how you put that.
Yeah. Well, if we don't, we're fighting the natural order of the universe.
We are. Um, and if you have the same thoughts, the same attitudes, the same behaviors, you'll get what you always got. If nothing changes, nothing changes. That's for sure.
Or it changes, but it's not what you wanted.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can you can neglect your health for a long period of time, and then eventually interesting stats. I was looking because one of the businesses we own is an insurance company, right? And today I was looking at why people die in what age brackets. And the majority of people who pass away in their 30s and up to 40, it's mostly accidents. It's like he's in 30s, mostly accidents. He's 50s and 60s, it's chronic illness. So when I look at that data, I like go, it's lifestyle, right? It's like all the pillars of lifestyle that we should have been living, but we're so hard charged. We don't eat properly. We don't sleep properly. We don't take care of our stress. We don't take care of this, that. And then and we deny it. Like, I know I'm supposed to go to the gym, you know what I mean? Like, but I'm too busy, and then all of a sudden it's like, darn, my neck is killing me or my back hurts or whatever. Or I know I'm not supposed to eat these meals so fast, right? But I'm in between meetings, man, and I got to go do that. And then all of a sudden your gallbladder starts going, hello, or something even worse. And so I think it's one of those things that if we didn't fight the universe, look, the sky's going to be here tomorrow, and whether a storm cloud blows through it or the the sunshine is there today. The sky doesn't really care. It's still the sky. It's just going to be like, okay, tomorrow, Um, and we're trying to hold on so tight to control things that we actually don't have enough space to let decision making and other people's opinions and other people's thoughts to actually be able to take root to perhaps they know something that we don't. And
Yeah.
until life throws you a crisis, you show up at the doctor and it's like, hey, you got this. And then that's enough of a pattern brain interrupt for them to go, okay, I'm changing my ways,
I'm
right?
paying attention now.
Right.
Man, this has been great. You and I, we could riff all day. Okay. Unfortunately, I won't get anybody to listen to that episode.
Sure.
So I'd love to have you back in the future and we'll dig deep into something and teach. So Doug C. Brown, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Well, Don Williams, thanks for having me here. I really appreciate it. I am very grateful. So thank you.
Me too. That's today's episode of the Proven Entrepreneur Show. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.